Hi folks, Slick Sizes here. Now the Barlow is a pattern that we all know really well, and we know what it looks like, and it looks like these. This is Boca, Case, Buck, a Rough Rider and Marbles. They all make knives which are broadly the same in terms of shape and design, with a teardrop shaped handle, with an elongated bolster and with a clip point blade. And that is the Barlow. Well, sort of. The history of the Barlow is pretty much, it was invented around about 1670 in Sheffield by a guy called Obadiah Barlow. And I think it was his son who really developed it and popularised it, and it became a knife synonymous with America. It was a sort of archetypal American knife, and Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer each, there's an episode in each where they acquired a Barlow knife. The only problem is that in all of that time, both back in Sheffield and later, there isn't really a contemporary drawing or picture of a Barlow knife, so we get the idea of what it is. We do know kind of from history that it has the longer bolster in order to make it more robust, but it was a working man's knife. I don't think there's any definitive evidence that it had a clip point necessarily. And nowadays, of course, we see companies like Lion Seal in particular, they do sheepfoot blades, and they also do the Lion Steel Dom has a spear point blade. And there's no reason why you shouldn't call those Barlows. And in fact, if I look at some Sheffield Barlows, now these are the ones I collect, particularly the Taylor's Eyewitness. Again, you've got the similar sort of deal in that you've got the teardrop shaped handle, and you've got a longer bolster, and you've got a clip point blade, and all the ones they do have clip point blades. Obviously they do them in lots of different handle materials, but the pattern's the same. The bolster is somewhat more stylised and shaped, but it's pretty much there. Another Sheffield maker, here, this is a Michael May one. Now this has the stamp of the Royal Borough of Hallamshire, which is what Sheffield is. Now this looks like a Barlow, it's teardrop shaped, so it's slightly sway backed. It has the elongated bolster, but this is where I break my nail, because I think this is one of those. Oh no, it's not too bad. It's a really nice knife actually. But it has a sheepsfoot blade, so clearly a little bit different. Other people take different takes on these things. This one here is from Arthur Wright, potentially another nail breaker, but again, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, this one's pretty tough. Pretty tough. It has the clip point blade, but it doesn't have the long bolster. Has the teardrop shape, but this is what they call a Barlow. Now I can't tell them they're wrong. It would be incorrect of me. It would be wrong of me to tell them that they are wrong, because it's their take on that archetypal design. So when we get another example, funnily enough again from Michael May here, which is what's known as the Clayton Barlow. Now the Clayton Barlow was designed by a guy called Graham Clayton, who was a Sheffield knife maker for a long time, and he did this design and he called it his Barlow. And obviously you can see it has a long bolster that's in brass. Michael May is very keen on brass, which I like, and it's Yorkshire walnut, locally sourced from, actually not from Sheffield but from Doncaster. But this is not the typical shape of a Barlow knife. It's let's see what this is like to open. It's quite stiff, but it's quite new, so it's less surprising. It has a clip point blade, which is probably right. It has a long bolster, but the handle is more I don't know, maybe almost trapper shaped. Annie's clip shaped, could you say, perhaps? It's actually very comfortable. The beauty of this knife is that I'm in the UK, and the length of blades matters. This one has a blade of 62mm cutting edge and less than 3 inches, or less than 76 millimeters for the full blade length, which makes it legal to carry. But unlike many legal to carry knives with that sort of size of blade, it has a decent sized handle, which I don't know if it's quite. You're never going to get any of these knives. They're never going to be a full 4-finger hold, but it's pretty much close to it. Compared to this Boker, which has almost identical size blade, but a tiny little handle, which, although it's beautifully made, this is ironwood. It's a lovely little knife, but it's way smaller in the hand. The other sort of biggie that you find in Sheffield is the Tailor's Eyewitness ones, which are just a little bit more round, a little bit girthy. There's a little bit to grip, but it's still only a 3-finger hold. The Arthur Wright, also 3-finger hold. The Michael May Barlow is getting more towards 4-finger, but it's still only a 3-finger hold. Whereas this just has that little bit of extra length in it that just makes it, better to hold in the hand. So, every time I do Michael May, you're always going to get a wheen of people are going to jump into the comments section, and they're going to say, "Oh yeah, but he makes rubbish knives and he sends out substandard stuff." I can't say he doesn't, because it's very difficult to prove a negative, but I've had now 8 knives off him, and I haven't had a fault with any of them. They've all been, they all look handmade. None of them looks like they came out of a machine like the Boker one does. The Boker one is so absolutely perfect as to be quite sterile. These, you can see that they've been shaped by hand. That piece of oak has been sanded and formed. It's close enough to be perfectly acceptable as a knife, but it's irregular enough to see the hand of the maker, and it also has a file worked spine, which is done by hand by Michael, and he has his own style, and I find it slightly more staccato. And I might be sounding like a pretentious git, but compared to the work that Lee White does, which I find a little bit more sort of rounded and flowing. Now, I don't like one more than the other. I just find there's a contrast between the two. There's also quite a big difference in the price range. These Lee Whites are rather more expensive, although this is getting there. It's not far away. As I failed to mention at the beginning, it was 01 tool steel rather than C70 or whatever, which is a very good steel to use. How good Michael's heat treat is, I don't know. I've no reason to say there's anything wrong with it. But I've never given these knives hard enough use to really be able to tell, and I don't have a Rockwell machine to test them. But I found this to be a really quite good user. I carried this in my pocket for a couple of weeks just to see how it went. I also failed to show you. Yeah, great reviewer, aren't I? Forgot to show you the Michael May, Sheffield, England. One of the criticisms I had on one of his earlier knives that he sold me, yeah, I think it might have been this one actually, was that you can't actually read the tang stamp. Now, that was quite common amongst Sheffield knife makers. It's quite common amongst traditional knife makers the world over. You have to put it into the half, well, it's not really half stop, but half closed, in order to see the full Sheffield, England. It's just one of those things that sort of irritates me a bit, but I think it's part of a tradition, because a lot of makers, and I think even Michael May, buy in their blades, grind them and fit them to handles, but the Ricasso versus the bolster is sort of determined in the design, but when the blade arrives, as if there's not enough room, there's not enough room. One thing I do also notice, this older one, that you can see a quite distinct join between where the blade and the spring meet up, whereas this one is near perfect. You can just see a little black line, but there's certainly not a hint of a gap. One fits into the other perfectly. There's no gapping between the spring and the liners. As I say, it's in brass liners and brass bolsters. They're not integral, I don't believe. I think they're, in fact, I'm certain that the bolsters are soldered onto the liners. I'm reasonably certain of that, but I don't know if Michael watches this. He might correct me, and feel free to do so. But actually, I think this is a really, really nice knife. It's very practical. It's a very practical UK carry knife because of that indisputably short enough blade that PC Plod is not going to arrest you. You know, we're taking it from the bolster or any way you wish to measure it. It's sub 3 inches. You could even measure it from the pivot and it probably comes to pretty close to the 3-inch mark. But cutting edge is just 63 millimeters, I believe, according to the spec. Just to prove that, I would say it's slightly shorter than 63 millimeters. But maybe when he measures it, he may measure it around the curve, which is probably the closest you're ever going to get to the legal definition in the UK. Anyway, that's probably more than enough to say about that, except this oak is really nice. It's a good material to make knife handles out of, and it's one that will show age in a good way because it will darken with the oil from your hands. So I'm sure that in years to come, this will go from being a very good knife to a very fine gentleman's knife. So there we are. If you like the stuff, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more of this, and there's at least one more from Michael May coming mixed in with other things, then please feel free to subscribe and remember to ring the bell if you want notifications. So thank you very much. Bye.